Before we jump into this week's video, I have an exciting announcement. We are hiring and we're looking for a curriculum designer. If you're someone that knows your way around technology, is excited about curriculum and designing lessons that are authentic and rigorous, this job is for you. I'm going to leave a link down in the description box so that you can check out the requirements for this position, and I hope to see you and have you join our team. Do your students struggle with completing graphic organizers? Do you want to help your students be able to organize their thinking in an effective way? In this video, I'm going to be sharing some really good tips on how to make your graphic organizers more effective for not only your students, but also for you. Hey everyone, my name is Bridget Spackman. I'm a multi-age teacher in Central Pennsylvania. I teach 4th, 5th, and 6th grade learners across all content areas, and I have a passion for ELA, authentic instruction, and rigorous teaching. Graphic organizers are a great tool to use inside of the classroom, but we have to have an end in mind. So I ask you, what is that end? What is the goal of the entire lesson that you're focusing on? Graphic organizers will really help your students be able to organize their thinking, pull things out of a text, and put it into a format that allows them to kind of see their learning more visually. But where do we go from there? Do you just stop, or should we be taking it a little bit further? If your classroom is anything like mine, my students are really struggling with what to put inside of an organizer, what information they need to be grabbing from the text, and also giving me as little as possible to be able to go on when completing their graphic organizers. So I want to share some tips that I have been using inside of my own classroom to really make graphic organizers as effective as possible. So tip number 1 is going to be a no-brainer, and that's model how to use it. And I know that we're already doing this inside of our classrooms, but it can be a bit of a struggle. We want students to be able to participate. We want to be able to demonstrate this learning and be able to put it up inside of our classroom just as if it was an anchor chart for them to go and look at on how to use this. So to do this, I have a simple trick where I will print my organizers as an entire poster. And so I wanted to share how to do that right here. So in order to make your graphic organizers into a poster size inside of your classroom, you do need to have Adobe Acrobat. Now, this is like a free Adobe download that you can get just by going to their website. And this is the only way that I know in printing out my graphic organizers. So to do this, if you have Adobe Acrobat, you know that it's on your computer, you can go ahead and right-click and you can hit open with. Now, my Adobe Acrobat Reader is a default for me, so it automatically is defaulted, but you would see it on this list of ways for you to be able to open up your file. So once you have that opened, you're gonna notice that the tools look a little bit different. And so to print this out as an entire poster, what you are going to do is hit the print icon, and then you are going to make sure that you have poster selected. So you're gonna notice that mine already is. So you can kind of toggle between the different types here, but you want to have poster selected. You will also then want to kind of start playing with this tile scale. So here on the right-hand side, you're gonna see like a preview, and what it's gonna do is it's going to print this graphic organizer onto multiple pages. And so your job at the end of this is gonna be to put the pages all together to make it into this really big format. Now, I normally just like to have mine printed onto 4 pages. I have gone to 6 pages, but 4 is typically a sweet spot for me. But if I was doing this as a whole group class and I wanted my students all the way in the very back to be able to see, then 6 is probably a really good option. So to do this, what you will want to do is change the tile scale. Now I will go to 200. Now stop before you do this. Do not hit enter or return. I think the habit is that we just hit return, it's gonna automatically print it, and you're never gonna get to see exactly what it looks like. So to be able to preview it using that little right-hand side icon, you can hit the arrow down at the bottom, and when you do, it's gonna adjust it and change what it looks like to the 200%. Now, I'm not gonna do 200 for this. I'm actually gonna play, and I'm gonna go to 150 because that's typically a size that I will use. But notice when I am at 150, I have a lot of white space all the way around, so I wanna see if I can make that just a little bit bigger. And so to do that, I'm just gonna go to 175 next. Again, don't hit return, but you can hit the arrow, and now you can see that I have it completely filled in to that entire space. So once I'm happy with where it looks, I can go ahead and print. Now, if you want to be careful with your overlapping, I have my overlap is 0.005. So it's a very, very, very small overlap. If I wanted to provide a little bit more overlap, I could change that. So I could go to 0.05 and see how that adjusts. And what that means is that basically I will be able to overlap on, it's going to print the same format on a little bit on each page so that I can overlap it and line it up correctly when I'm putting it all together. So I am going to go ahead and leave it at that overlap, and then I'm going to hit print. So here you're going to notice this is my graphic organizer all blown up, and it's on 4 different sheets of paper. So what I like to do first is try to just match all of the pieces up. I know exactly what it's supposed to look like. So here is what kind of the finished product is going to be. So I will leave my first corner done. I actually will not cut any other pieces. You will need some scissors, and you will also need some glue or tape. I have used both, although if you're writing on it, if you use tape, your markers, you're going to be able to tell that it's tape. So if you want to use glue, it is a little bit longer, a little bit more, time that you're going to be putting into it, but it still works. So you're going to notice here that I have this big, huge gap. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to actually cut this page here. This is going to be my upper right-hand corner page. So I'm going to take that and then I'm going to cut off this excess. And I'm just going to do my best. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think in the beginning, I always did want it to be really perfect, but now I've really learned my lesson. So once I have that, I can go ahead and match it up. You can see here, it's about as good as it's going to get. And so I'm going to go ahead and add my glue really quick. Just do a nice little line down here. It's funny, I've been doing this for so many years. And so I always kind of assume that so many teachers out there know how to do this. But I also have to remind myself that I was that teacher that did not know that this was possible many, many years ago. So once I have that one glued on, now I'm going to go to my bottom. So I don't have to do anything else with the top ones here. Now I'm going to go to my lower left-hand corner. So now with this one, I'm going to cut this top part to overlap and be able to glue on here. So again, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. So I can see that right here is a really good line for me to be able to cut on. So I'm going to just start kind of cutting, wanting to get as close as possible without taking too much off so that I have some to glue on. And then I can line it up, get an idea. Did I do that pretty well? Yep, looks pretty good. Now I can go ahead and glue it. So again, I'm just going to add my little sliver of glue here. And I can probably put a little bit more down here at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and just put that on. And that looks pretty good. Covering up the one just a tad, but I think it'll work. Now with this last one, this last page, you will need to do 2 cuts. You're going to do 1 cut here and the second cut up here. And because again, you're going to glue it onto the side and the top portion of it. So again, I'm just going to kind of add my cuts here, add my cut here. And then I can just glue it. I'm going to clean up my mess here. But now I'm going to add glue on this side here and also at the very top. So let me go ahead and just try to add that. Put glue, put our glue down. And now we can, there's kind of the remainder of my tea there. This page will typically give me a little bit more trouble than any other pages. It's not going to be absolutely perfect. Actually, this one's probably one of the worst ones that I've ever done. But you can still kind of get the point. Students will still be able to use this and participate and engage in like a lesson with it, even though it's not absolutely perfect. And now you can see here that I have a giant poster that I can use with my students. Now, if you're somebody who does not want to spend the time in trying to create your graphic organizers into posters, I completely understand that. But it is still important that we are modeling for our students how to use those graphic organizers. So what are some other alternatives that we could keep in mind? One of these is to be able to project your graphic organizer using some form of a tablet. Now, I have an iPad and I do have an Apple Pencil, and so it is very easy for me to project my graphic organizer utilizing a very simple annotation app. So here you're going to see I have my iPad opened up. Now I will use a variety of annotations apps for different reasons. So some of the ones that I will use is Notability, and mainly this is because my students have iPads for themselves that is provided by the district. And so because they have Notability, I want to be able to model how to use that tool within the classroom. So if I'm showing them how I'm using it during my teaching, they're able to pick up on some of those tips and tricks that I'm modeling for them while also using it, and they can then implement it into their own time. So some other apps that I have used are going to be Explain Everything. I also love GoodNotes, so you can choose a tool that works best for you and also your device. So when I model anything for my students, I will go ahead and place my graphic organizer inside of Notability. So here you can see they have it up in Notability, and I can project this using an Apple TV that's connected to my projector. So I have a projector with a large screen because I am teaching whole group at the moment. And I have my Apple TV connected to it. So I am very easily, I can just hit screen record, and then I can mirror that to my projector. Now, I can also do this with the TVs that we have inside of our classroom. So if you have some form of a TV and you have an Apple TV, I recommend maybe some old ones that you have in your house that you could possibly get connected. But it is a very easy way for you to show students and model everything, but from a simple device. So for these, what I will do is I will pull up the graphic organizer. We will talk and model through this together. The only downside with this part of it is that students don't have the ability to contribute to the graphic organizer. If you're looking at utilizing the paper printout version, students can come up and they can share a hand in the writing. So you also want to think about exactly how are you going to be teaching this? How do you want students to be able to participate? Now, for me, when I am utilizing my iPad, I will have my students take out their whiteboards and they will contribute in a way that they're doing on their whiteboards, practicing there. I can give quick and easy feedback, and then I'm able to place what they have done and put it into the graphic organizer for them to all see it. So just be thinking about that and what just really works best for your use. Now, one more thing for the modeling on how to use graphic organizers within your teaching, and that's really to just scaffold the process. Now, for scaffolding, we think about the I do, we do, y'all do, because I'm from the South, you do, but you want to scaffold this entire process for them. So what I would like to do is I will fill out some portions of it during my teaching. I will kind of model a little piece of it, then I will have my students practice together as an entire group. We will do things together, then they will do things independently for their independent assignments. So I try to scaffold as much as possible with these graphic organizers to ensure that I'm setting the expectations for what I want this to look like at the end. Tip number 2 in using graphic organizers is to help provide support when needed. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to do this all the time, but it is really helpful to have something to help kind of guide students in a graphic organizer. That's one of the things that's so hard about them, is that they are so open-ended. You just have a lot of shapes and arrows and lines, and students have to know exactly what they're putting in what location. So to really help your students understand, like, what is some of the information that I'm pulling out, I like to use a tool called ThinkMarks. Now, this is something that I have created within my own classroom, and I have used, and these ThinkMarks are not just kind of your basic boxes that you might have seen before, but they're more guiding questions and little prompts that will help students just be able to figure out, what am I trying to think here? Where am I going next? And this is really just a guide in their learning. Now, providing my students with these ThinkMarks is great, but if I don't show them exactly how to use them, then they're never going to use them effectively. So my tip for you is to not only just just give your students maybe some of these prompts. You can even create them together, but to also make sure that you're modeling how to use these guiding questions when completing graphic organizers. So let me show you exactly what I mean. So up here, you're gonna see these are some samples of my think marks that I have created. Now they come with so many other ones, but these are just some that I have used inside of my classroom and really enjoy. And the bundle pack does come with a lot more. I will leave a link down in the description box if you guys want to go and check that out. But I'm going to focus on this very first one, which is going to be setting, because this is actually a lesson that I recently did with my 5th grade students, and we were comparing and contrasting setting. And so to help them understand that setting piece, they read the book, The Curious Garden, and they got to do this with a partner. And so with their partners, they then had to pick out the setting at the beginning of the story and then what it looked like at the end. So they were comparing and contrasting the differences between it. Now, if you haven't read this story, it is a very, very sweet story. It's based off of I want to believe it's like the midline. Is it called Midline? I'm probably saying that horribly wrong. Let's go down and check inside of the notes, because the author did have like a little note here. The High Line. That's what I was thinking of. So this story is based off of the New York High Line. My sister and I went there a few years ago, and it is a very beautiful place. But they kind of imagined, about this High Line and where it had all started from. So it's about this little kid in this very dreary city, and how this child then became a gardener, and they started gardening, and it made it into a very beautiful place. And there was this like old abandoned railway, and now it was just this gorgeous place. And so the kids had to compare and contrast, and we had to pull things from the text to do it. So to help guide them with the setting, we think about like where, the time of day, time of the year, what year is it happening, especially if this is a historical event that's occurring, the weather, the environment, the mood, the tone, all of those things is something that we really want students to keep in mind when thinking about the setting. And so what they would do is, as we would go and we would move along, I would underline, I would highlight, I would kind of show them exactly what we were doing this with our own mentor text. And then students kind of use this to think, okay, did I go ahead and at the beginning of this story, did I talk about the where? Did I talk about the time of day? Did I talk about the year? Did I talk about the weather, the environment, the mood, the tone? All of those would have then added and contributed to this graphic organizer. Because a lot of the times students will end up showing me something like this. Do yours do that too? But they would give me this. And so the think mark is there to really kind of pull out as much information as possible and to really get them thinking in the process while they're reading. So this is kind of the purpose of this, but we also have to make sure we're modeling it. So as I would be teaching my lesson, I would say, okay, let's think about where. So where are we in the story? And I might have this page pulled up without any of the underlines. I would say, after reading this page, looking at our think mark, where are we? And the kids would say, oh, we're in a city. Okay, perfect. Let's also think about the environment. Okay, the environment is going to be all about the events and everything that's kind of occurring around me. Like, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? All of those pieces. And so this is where we are able to kind of pull some of those pieces out. But I model for kids how to stop after their reading, how to look at their think mark, and how to pull some of that information out so that they're not just reading this all and then trying to go to this at the very end of their reading and say, okay, well, now I'm really confused. I don't really know where to start. You have to teach kids to stop and think as they are reading an entire text. Another great tip for using think marks is to have it as a mini conference. So you can mini conference with your students as they're completing their graphic organizers, and you can open up your think mark and pull it out and say, okay, let's go through and look at your graphic organizer together. Let's see if we have all of these elements in here. And as students are realizing, oh wait, I'm missing a ton of stuff, they're able to go back and do the next really important tip, which is revise. So my third tip when it comes to making graphic organizers effective inside of your classroom is revision. Now, graphic organizers is kind of like a rough draft. It's where you're basically dumping all of the information. And we have to teach students that we can't just go with our first gut. Here's kind of what it is. We always need to go back and we make it a little bit better. So for the revision process, after you've mini conference or you've had an opportunity to look over it with your students, give them that chance to take it back and be able to add more, especially after you've had either a conversation as an entire class, either as a small group or during that mini conference. Revision truly is the hardest skill for students to learn, but the more that we're able to infuse revision, not only just in our writing, but in our graphic organizers and everything that we're doing inside of our classroom, the easier it is going to get for them. Give your students some questions to think about when you're having them go back and add more to their graphic organizers, or you can reteach the entire lesson all over again. This is exactly what I had to do with The Curious Garden. We pulled that text out, we read it together, and then I had my students go back and revise their graphic organizers. It's going to allow them to see, oh, I can make this better, and here are the ways that I know how to make this better. You can even make it a teaching moment and have them reflect on what they did differently from the first one to the second. My last tip that I have for you is to keep on going. And here's what I mean by that. I want us to take our graphic organizers and keep moving on with our thinking and our learning. We don't want students to just stop with the organizing portion of it. We want them to be able to explain their thinking. Where did you go from this? If I wanted you to compare and contrast it, yeah, you can put it into a graphic organizer, but that's just to help you organize your thoughts. Where do we go from there? And writing is going to be the solution to this. And I know so many students out there really struggle with writing, but again, the more that we're able to infuse this in everything that we're doing, reading, also your writing class, in your science and in your social studies, even in math when they're explaining problems, it gets easier for kids, but we have to teach them how to do that. So consider having a discussion post or having them journal once they've completed their graphic organizers. They have all the thoughts right there in the paper, but now they just need to put it into a sentence format. This can be considered a TDA. So if you are from a state like I am that really focuses a lot on text-dependent analysis because it is on our state exams, then you might want to consider trying to put this into your own classroom. So don't stop at the graphic organizer, but rather have them take that graphic organizer and put it into a way that they can express their thinking using a coherent and full-blown paragraph. Now, if you have some students that are like, oh, I had to do this every single week, I would lose my mind. I get it. You could always throw in some really fun ones where they can create a podcast using that. They could also do it as a Flipgrid. So there are so many other ways to really make this fun and engaging while also kind of sharing their learning with one another. So they're still having to take that graphic organizer and have like an end piece to it, but you may also kind of throw in some fun stuff so that they're not always having to write out a TDA, because that can get really exhausting and overwhelming after a while, especially if you have to grade them all the time. Whew. I don't know about you, but I don't think I would want to do that every single week. So to do this, here's what I recommend. I would have some form of an essential question. So build that essential question all around the topic or the skill that the students are using the graphic organizer for. And so once you have them complete that graphic organizer, the next step will be for them to organize that information and put it into that writing by answering that simple essential question. So before you ever get started with that graphic organizer, it may also be a really great idea to take that essential question and post it up in your classroom beforehand. You want them to be thinking about that as they're reading and engaging with the text, as they're looking for vocabulary, as they're going through and reading it themselves to pull out information to put it onto the graphic organizer. The entire time, your purpose, your why, is to be able to answer that essential guided question. And that's going to be the purpose for your graphic organizer as well. It's there to help kind of put out all of that thinking, put it onto a piece of paper and in just like a more visual format to be able to answer that question at the end. So that is it, guys. That's going to be the entire video and tips on how to make graphic organizers effective inside of your classroom. If you have something that you're like, oh man, I really want to try this out inside of my classroom, leave it down into the comments. Or if you have something else that you have thought of or have used and it's worked really well inside of your own classroom, please be sure to share it down in the comments, because all of us working together to make this a little bit easier on ourselves is just a huge game changer. So I would love and appreciate any sort of comments, questions, or insights. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video until the very end. Please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you have not already and you want to see more videos like this. And don't forget to hit the notification bell for the next time I upload or I go live. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.